A group of high school students is getting ready to board a bus, each student wearing their school uniforms and carrying packed bags. Among them, a male student named Kato stands out because he is very excited about the trip. He expresses his enthusiasm, saying that this is the moment he has been waiting for. His friend, Sugi, rolls his eyes and tells Kato that he is overreacting to what is just a simple field trip. However, Kaito insists on his excitement and explains that he has been waiting for this trip for 10 years, which confuses Sugi but also makes him laugh. At the same time, the class president, who is named Sato, notices their classmate Torishima, who tends to keep to himself. She approaches him to check if he is okay, because he mentions that he is feeling a little nervous about the upcoming trip. To help, Seto offers him some anti-sickness medication that she has. However, Seto's friend, Suzuki, warns her not to get too close to Torishima, saying that he is dangerous, which makes Seto pause for a moment. She continues talking, mentioning that Torishima is rumored to have been in the hospital for 6 months because of a serious injury he got from a fight, which is why he has to repeat a year in school. Even though Torishima has faced this setback, the kind president does not judge him. Instead, she feels sympathy for him because he has wasted so much time dealing with his injury. Suddenly, the delinquent Kuga shows his anger, showing his fangs as he becomes irritated by the other classmates blocking his way. Sato tries to calm him down, saying that everyone will get on the bus eventually. However, this only makes Kuga angrier at her, which leads to a heated argument between him and Suzuki. Kuga, annoyed by the girl's interruption, reveals that his intention is to bully the two of them, which makes the girl feel scared. Suddenly, Torishima grabs him by the shoulder and tells him to stop what he is doing. Kuga does not back down from the man's interruption, leading to a fistfight between the two. Kaito looks on from his bus seat, and he is happy to see such youthful energy from the two fighting, rather than being troubled by it. As the other students try to stop the two from fighting, Kaito just keeps looking on with bliss at what he thinks is a peaceful sight. The teacher, Yajima, finally interrupts the fight, albeit encouraging them to only fight when she is not around. A time later, the bus starts to move as Kaito looks at the view of the city from his window. He goes on to think about how peaceful everything is. He is so at peace with the bus's movements that he starts getting sleepy. Sugi offers a game to help him stay awake, but the man refuses out of disinterest. Sato is looking at the man from her seat, and she is glad to see that Kaito looks happy. Suzuki, though, sees him as an emotionless blob, so he cannot really tell. As the man begins to sleep, Sugi begins reading the news on his tablet. The girls across from him notice how busy he looks, so the man tells them that he is reading about urban legends. He says there is a mystery where there is a bus that goes missing every year, and that there is a legend saying that the bus that goes missing gets dragged into a death game. The people on the bus are set to be put to sleep and then moved to a remote island where they are forced to kill each other, wearing explosive collars around their necks. The flirty girls playfully act scared and tease Kaito, asking him if he will save them if anything bad happens. Kaito, with a playful grin, responds that it is his duty as a man to save girls in trouble. Just then, Kuga jumps into the conversation, boldly declaring that if he were in a game like this, he would not hesitate to defeat every man and do whatever he wants with all the women. His comments create a tense atmosphere among the group, but Kaito, still sleeping, somehow manages to lighten the mood. Sugi suddenly realizes that he is starting to feel sleepy too. It turns out he is not alone, as everyone around them seems to be getting drowsy as well. They notice a misty gas surrounding them, making the situation even more confusing. After a little while, only Sugi and Torishima remain standing, trying to understand what is happening, while the driver wears a gas mask. It's not long until even the two cannot stay awake. Meanwhile, Kaito finds himself lost in his dreams. In this dream, he is dressed in fantasy-like clothing and talking to a figure who looks like a goddess, making him feel like he has been here before. He asks the goddess why he has returned, as he remembers wishing to go home after saving the world. The goddess only brings him back to see if he has any wishes beyond just wanting to go home. Kaito firmly assures her that he desires nothing more than that one wish, and he warns her that if she takes it away from him, he will not forgive her. Despite his determination, the goddess wants to ensure that he is certain. She tells him that she can grant him more wishes and encourages him to consider staying in this world, offering him the chance to be a king or even have her as a lover. However, the man says he cares for none of that. The goddess tells him how he is wasting every skill and fortune he has left behind in the fantasy world just so he can go home. However, Kaito firmly tells the goddess that his family and friends are waiting for him back home. Hearing this, the goddess sheds a tear, feeling sad about his decision. She warns him that once he goes back to his own world, he cannot return to the fantasy world again, and she asks him one last time if he is really sure about his choice. After this moment, Kato suddenly wakes up to find himself in a classroom. In front of him, a man is waving a gun around, causing panic and fear among his classmates. In the brief moment that he takes in the chaotic scene, he sees the armed man fire at Sato, who is in danger. Just as the bullet is about to hit her, Kaito uses a mysterious power related to space and time. This incredible ability freezes everyone and everything in the classroom, stopping all movement in an instant. Only the caster is able to move, and he moves around casually to assess the situation. He then turns off his spell, bringing the flow of time back to the others. Kaito just appeared in front of Sato with his right arm raised. Everyone is in shock over what happened, most of all the armed man. As our hero checks on Sato to see if she is okay, she tells him that they have found themselves trapped in a deadly game called Survival Lost. The young man quickly realizes that their situation is very similar to what Shugi was reading about earlier, and everyone confirms that they are indeed right in the middle of it. Torishima warns everyone that it is very dangerous to be distracted and insists that they must stay alert and focused. The armed man notices Torishima and starts to laugh with happiness because he recognizes him as the winner of last year's game. In an attempt to regain control of the situation, he begins to wave his gun around again, trying to intimidate everyone. Meanwhile, Kaito sits calmly in his seat, looking carefree and completely unbothered by the armed man and his gun. This only frustrates the armed man even more. In a fit of anger, the armed man shoots bullets at Kaito with incredible speed, but Kaito effortlessly catches every bullet in his hand, showing no sign of fear or concern. To everyone else, it looks like the bullets simply vanish into thin air. The armed man becomes confused, thinking there is something wrong with his gun. But Kaito then shows that all the bullets are actually in his hand. This surprises the armed man so much that he starts swearing loudly in frustration. Shugi asks his friend what is going on, but Kaito tells him that it's a long story. Suddenly, Kaito's neck explodes. The armed man is in glee, revealing that he was the one who made it happen, much to the trauma of everyone else watching the horrific sight. Years ago, Kaito finds himself in a broken fantasy world filled with danger. The goddess Seo asks Kaito if he will reconsider his decision to return to his own world. She tells him that he can make this magical fantasy world his home. This makes Kaito feel frantic and worried. He starts to rant about how dangerous this world really is, explaining that even the weakest monsters have the power to destroy everything many times over. When he finally goes back to his own world, he finds out that the 10 years he spent in the fantasy world only passed as 10 seconds in his own world. Now he is back in his teenage room. His little sister, Nanoka, walks in, and he greets her as if it has been ages since he last saw her, which makes her feel a bit unfortunate. Since returning, Kaito has been living each day as if it could be his last, enjoying every moment. But now in the present, right after the collar around his neck explodes, he feels annoyed that he has become involved in something bad once again. The explosion only brings a smile to the young man's face, seeing that he has become so strong now that he does not even feel the explosion. What happened was so outrageous that the armed man began to scream and laugh. He activates the timer on the collars of every student, making them panic. As the clock ticks, the panic does not dissipate, and the armed man is just enjoying the scene. He tells them how much he loves seeing people's social barriers break as they start killing each other. With Kaito ruining his fun, he is happy with the cancellation of seeing everyone explode to nothing. Kuga talks to the man and tells him that he would kill Kaito if it meant he would let him live. The armed man then tells everyone to kill Kaito within an hour. Our hero asks what will happen to everyone if they do it. The armed man says that everyone will still die aside from the last man standing. Kaito gets up from his chair and does a dimensional spell that makes every collar disappear from everyone's necks. Everyone is enjoying this aside from the armed man. One female student questions what Kaito is, making the other students question it too despite all that he has done for them. This girl becomes nervous and says that he might be a monster. Kuga fans the flames by telling everyone that Kaito can snuff out their lives whenever he feels like it. Our hero assures them that if he really is a monster, then everyone would have been gone by now. This backfires as it only makes his classmates fear him more. As the tension rises, Sato stands up for him and encourages everyone to see him as the classmate they have always known. He reminds everyone that he saved all of them. This lightens up the atmosphere so much so that even the girl from before apologizes to him for calling him a monster. The armed man then interrupts their moment by turning on a monitor with a broadcast that reveals the half-naked Yajima being held hostage by men armed with guns. Despite the men surrounding her, the teacher has not yet lost her will to fight, telling them not to touch her. The armed man threatens Kaido, telling him that he has many ways to make a woman behave without an explosive collar. The students are in horror as they see their teacher in a perilous situation. Despite this, Yajima does not give up and breaks the rope that ties her to the chair. However, the men around her catch her right away as she tries to get away, and they pin her to the ground. They love to overpower a weak woman. The armed man laughs loudly, confident that even a monster like Kaido cannot do anything if their teacher is beyond his reach. Despite this, our hero continues to show no worry. He grows tired of hearing their captor talk all the time, so he uses magic to make his mouth disappear. Before the others can say anything about what happened, Kaido disappears into thin air. They look at the screen and see that he is already in the room where their captors are hiding lie. All the men are surprised when he appears out of nowhere and starts firing at them. Despite this, they hit nothing but the wall behind him. The young boy opens up his hand, revealing that he is holding all of their bullets. The evil men only get so into a frenzy that they start firing more at him. With just a few simple words, Kaido uses his power to hypnotize the men, causing them to drop their guns and start fighting each other instead. Back in the classroom, Torishima watches closely, trying to figure out what Kaido did to their captor's mouth. At that moment, Subi calls Torishima to share some exciting news. He has successfully hacked into the enemy's computers and gained access to their private server. Torishima, curious about Kaido's abilities, asks Sugi if Kaido has always been this powerful. Suvi explains that it seems to be a recent development, noting that it was about 3 days before their school trip when Kaido called him unexpectedly, sounding very excited. Just then, a magical portal suddenly opens, and Kaido steps through it, carrying their teacher in his arms, surprising everyone in the classroom. The students all let Yajima catch up with what was going on. She is so busy with their explanation that she realizes late that she is half naked in front of them. With a spell, our hero magically puts clothes on their teacher. Meanwhile, their captor gets up to wonder how the young man has defeated all the well-trained men he has gathered on the island. He brings out a knife and tries to stab our hero. With the tip of his finger, he stops the speeding knife that can even penetrate a diamond. He then blows on the knife, making it magically disappear. He then knees the soldier in the gut. Yajima gets into the action by kicking him in the groin. She tells everyone that she will never forgive the man after all that she has been through. Now that they think everything is over, the students want to go home. This disappoints Kaido, who still wants to continue the school trip. Seto tells him that they can always plan another trip. She asks if he can take them back home. Kaido says he can take them wherever he wants. However, rather than go home, he suggests that they go and find the mastermind behind the game first. Torishima nods in agreement with Kaido about the importance of finding the mastermind behind the deadly game. Suvi also supports this idea, explaining that if they return home now without stopping the person responsible, that person might come after them later. He shares that the game has affected his family personally, which fuels his determination to help take down the mastermind. When Subi looks at Kaido, his eyes are filled with a strong sense of purpose, and Kaido recognizes that look. It reminds him of something he saw in the other world. Kaido moves to the window and starts swatting at something that the others can't see. They become curious and ask him what he is doing, and he explains that a sniper just tried to attack them, which shocks everyone in the room. After that, Kaido focuses his energy and uses his magic to scan the island they are on, almost like a radar, searching for any hidden dangers that might be lurking nearby. He finds that there are snipers, heavy artillery, tanks, mine traps, and many more. A light then appears from the window. It is a helicopter ready to fire at them. It fires a missile, but Kaido has already surrounded the building they are in with a barrier. No matter how many missiles the vehicle fires at Kaido, they are unable to break through his strong and indestructible defense. To turn the tables, Kaido decides to fight back and launches a missile of his own, causing the helicopter to explode in a spectacular burst of flames and smoke. After witnessing the explosion, Sato, one of Kaido's friends, asks him what his next plan is. Kaido calmly replies that he intends to negotiate for peace. Sugi expresses his desire to join Kaido in this mission, but Kaido firmly tells him that he cannot come along. In that moment, Kaido reflects on his friend's eyes and notices that they remind him of the desperate eyes he encountered in the other world. As Sugi shares a troubling thought, revealing that someone behind the deadly game might have been responsible for the death of his father, Kaido begins to understand the pain in Sugi's eyes. He realizes that Shugi carries the look of a child who is desperate for revenge after losing his parents. This revelation weighs heavily on Kaido's mind as he considers the impact of their shared struggles and the darkness that lies ahead. Sugi elaborates on how he has known about the existence of the game since his dad is a journalist. After his dad disappeared while trying to solve a missing person case, he and his mother needed to move often because of witness protection. After the bus got hijacked, he actually found some relief in finding a lead to what might have happened to his dad. Kaido tells him he understands, but despite this, he still does not want to bring him along. Our hero disappears from the room, knowing that his friend might resent him forever. However, he does not care, remembering when he let child victims of tragedy handle their revenge directly in the other world. After they succeeded in their revenge, he came to see how their minds broke down from the trauma. It took a lot of his personal care for the children to get them back to a degree of normalcy. Kaido arrives at the island's surveillance room. As all the men point their guns at Kaido, he makes their weapons explode in an instant. He then approaches the military man in charge of the island and asks who created the game. The villain just laughs and says that he has a nuclear missile ready on an aircraft carrier and that he has already pressed the fire button. Kaido, feeling bored, listens to the villain rant about how the world is divided into people who kill and people who get killed. As Kaido's boredom grows, he casts a spell. At that moment, the aircraft carrier suddenly explodes. The students in the classroom can see a bright purple light shining from a distance, showing the destruction of the carrier. A dragon appears and says he has destroyed the carrier. Kaido reveals that the fire dragon is his friend, and its name is Hellburn. As Hellburn hovers behind him, Kaido tells the man to be grateful to him for stopping the missile explosion and obliges him to spill about the mastermind. Overwhelmed, the old man is stunned and speechless about what he's witnessing. The dragon gets the hero's attention, but the man suddenly laughs like crazy, dumbfounded by everything. Kaido tries to understand the man, but the dragon keeps calling for him. The dragon says it has shrunk in size, and Kaido is surprised that he can still see it. Feeling excited, the dragon almost breathes fire, but Kaido quickly stops it. Once the dragon calms down, it asks why Kaido isn't living the peaceful life he wants, which seems to always attract trouble. The dragon offers to burn some things for him, but Kaido tells it to go back before the gate to the other world closes. As a magic circle starts to glow, Hellburn tells Kaido to summon him if he wants to destroy something, and then he says goodbye. Meanwhile, the man continues to talk to himself, feeling upset about the situation. Kaido thinks about looking into his friend's mind later to find some useful information. When he arrives in the classroom, his classmates greet him with a lot of questions about the explosion. He explains that it was caused by his friend Sugi. They open a duffel bag, and Kaido tells them that it contains everyone's phones and a strange hard drive. Since he doesn't know much about computers, he asks Sugi to hack the hard drive so they can find out who the mastermind is right away. Sugi begins to search for information and tells the group that he can hack the drone that is watching them, as well as the security cameras inside the building. As they inspect the drive, Kaido excuses himself to do some physical work and roam around the area. Sugi panics as his friend leaves him again. Torishima comments that Kaido relies on him, which is why he entrusts the contents of the drive to him. However, he refuses to believe that he's trustworthy, as Kaido can do everything alone. Their president interferes, saying that he's a big help to their class, and that he must believe in himself. Hearing this, Shugastaki's confidence is renewed, and he is determined to win the game. Meanwhile, in a lavish mansion, a group of affluent mask-wearing guests are all gathered and waiting for the live telecast to continue. A girl wearing a bunny costume tries to calm them down, but the guests are getting impatient as time goes by, ranting about paying a lot of money just to participate in the betting game. The women are excited to see the boy who won last year participate and see him break soon. Things are getting out of hand as more guests complain of getting bored. At the backstage, the manager feels very stressed because the show has stopped after a soldier missed his shot. He is under pressure because they have powerful customers, some of whom are as important as the head of a big company. The manager reminds his team that these rich people are crazier than they look and enjoy watching young kids fight to the death. They think of human life as a game they can play with their money and power. For them, this place is where they can show their darkest desires. Suddenly, one of the bunny girls rushes in and tells the manager that they cannot keep the VIPs waiting. She fears they might get killed just for the rich people's entertainment. The manager gets angry and snaps at her, telling her to offer her head instead because they are still trying to figure out what is happening. Meanwhile, back in the classroom, Sugi and the others are watching the venue through the security camera. They discover that a group of wealthy VIPs is paying to watch them kill each other. Sugi points out that these people must be important since they are wearing masks to hide their faces. The students feel shocked and angry to learn that they are just toys for the rich. Sugi manages to connect to the internet and receives a message from Kato. In the message, Kato says they should post the CCTV video to DaTube and send a heart sticker along with it. Sugi tries not to let his emotions get the best of him, not realizing that Kato is using a spell on him to influence his thoughts. He tells Torishima that he got a message from Kato to expose the people in the venue on DaTube. However, Kuga interjects, saying that they're fools to broadcast the influential people, and reminding them that there are also rich among them, referring to their two classmates, Hirose and Ki. The girl is shocked, thinking that there's a possibility that her father and grandfather are at the venue. Kuga laughs at the rich girl's misery, saying that she would never want to expose her wealthy family because it would ruin her life. He warns that they better not broadcast anything on D suddenly. Torishima gets angry and punches Kuga in the face, grabbing him by his collar. This makes the situation even more difficult for their classmate. The president steps in to stop the fight, and Torishima tells Kuga that he is the one making everyone anxious. Sugi checks the list of names and reassures his classmates that their family names are not on it, which makes the girl breathe a sigh of relief. Feeling excited, he begins to broadcast, eager to expose their captors and see what Kaito will do next. Meanwhile, at the venue, everyone is shocked to see Kaito floating above them. He tells them that he is just an ordinary high school student caught in their death game. However, he declares that he cannot forgive them for ruining his school trip, and he vows that all of them will pay with their lives. After he floats down, the VIPs clap at Kaito, saying that his magic trick is good. He tells them it is a real one and not an illusion, but they refuse to believe and laugh. One guest sarcastically comments that they must have a real wizard living in today's world. However, instead of wanting a magic trick, they are looking for a bloody killing show. Wanting to reveal the identities of the guests, the boy uses his delete magic to remove their masks. In an instant, their faces are fully exposed. The guests start to panic, realizing that their identities are now visible to everyone. A woman tries to calm everyone down, assuring them that their identities will not be revealed to the outside world. However, Kaito interrupts, informing them that they are actually being live-streamed on DaTube, which makes them think twice about what they say. Holding a microphone, he urges them to repent for their sins while they still have the chance. But one guest points at him, accusing him of lying because they are in an isolated place without any signal. This accusation creates even more tension in the room, as everyone grapples with the reality of their situation and the possibility that they are being watched. He acknowledges that the boy must want to be a hero, but he threatens to include his family in the death game to make them kill each other, since they are beyond saving. Kaito decides to make them experience the show they badly want to watch. He then uses his duplication magic and puts explosive collars on the guests. Seeing their panic-stricken faces, he explains that the collars they're wearing are the same as what they gave to the students, and they will explode in 2 hours. Now that their lives are in danger, the rich people ask Kaito if seeing them kill each other will satisfy him. He denies this, as the opposite will happen. Killing someone will make them explode. The rich woman pleads with him, asking him to spare her life and promising to give him anything he desires, even a life filled with luxury. However, the boy refuses her offer, which only makes the woman angrier. She then demands to know what he really wants. He responds that he wants information about their organization. He explains that they need to carefully think about who the most evil person in their group is and reveal that person's identity. He tells them that if they want to have more time before their explosive collars go off, they need to stand up and point at someone they believe is guilty. The VIPs look worried because they understand that if they accuse someone, it could ruin their reputation completely, almost like committing social suicide. The boy enjoys watching their confused and frightened expressions as they struggle with this difficult choice. He reminds them to keep their answers short and simple. Then he officially announces that the stage is now open for everyone to share their misdeeds, setting the tone for what will happen next. Right away, a man comes up to the stage and points at the guy in a blue suit, saying that he's the CEO of a brokerage firm and made unfair profits from insider trading. The woman then snatches the microphone, accusing a bald man of taking advantage of young women and killing them after satisfying his desire. The pointing game continues, and the people in the hall are non-stop exposing each other's evil doings. He helplessly looks at them, not owning their sins, thinking that if they just admit their faults, everything will be over. He exits the room to prepare the finishing touches to his plans. Meanwhile, the students are busy checking social media and watching the trending video about the recent events. Some of them are still in shock and can hardly believe that such a cruel person exists in the world. One of the students notices that the Marines are finally taking action, and they all feel a sense of joy and relief, thinking they might finally be able to go home soon. At the same time, Sugi and Torishima are paying close attention to what is happening. Sugi comments that if he were not directly involved in this situation, he would find it hard to believe right away. He values his own judgment and thinks it is important to rely on it. His thoughts are interrupted when Kuga starts laughing while watching their captors make foolish mistakes that lead to their own downfall. Just then, Torishima notices that Kaito has disappeared again, which makes him worry. Elsewhere, Kaito finally finds the mastermind behind the death game. He watches as this person approaches a helicopter, and the bodyguard tells him to hurry because the soldiers are coming to the island. This moment is tense, as Kaito knows that everything is coming to a head and that they must act quickly to stop the mastermind before it's too late. The man reprimands the agent for rushing him, asking if he has told anyone that he will be coming to the island. As the bodyguard tells him no, he immediately shoots him in the head, ending his life. He does the same to the other guards, killing all of them. As he moves to board the helicopter, Kaito catches his attention, calling him Mr. Chairman and then Mr. Bus Driver, referring to his disguise earlier. The man tries to pretend that he doesn't know what is going on, but Kaito sees right through his act. He understands that the man is watching from a special seat, so he doesn't believe his excuse. The man scoffs at Kaito and congratulates him for finding him, revealing that he is the chairman of Survival Loss. He then asks Kaito how he figured out his identity. Kaito explains that no one knew the chairman's face, so he had to piece together bits of information from everyone's memories. The man calls Kaito's explanation a bluff and tells him that he is barking up the wrong tree. He insists that he should not be punished because he does not care about the death game. However, he goes on to say that when people have everything, they easily become bored. He believes that upper-class people who have no entertainment can lose their motivation, which can harm society as a whole. Kaito listens and agrees that having fun is important, but he insists that it should not involve killing innocent people. The man refuses to call them innocent victims, saying that they made a great sacrifice. This conversation highlights the different perspectives they hold, as Kaito feels strongly against the killing, while the chairman justifies it as a necessary part of their twisted game. He categorizes the boy as a common man who won't even get a second of fame, just like others, elaborating that society is just a survival of the fittest. Before their damaged, unspoiled lives should get their fame as a source of entertainment for influential people to make their lives matter. He is doing everyone a favor, and he has nothing but good intentions. Hearing this, Kaito calls him a truly vile man. Holding his gun, the man tells him that they should now part ways and tries to fire at him. However, the hero uses lock magic, resulting in the gun getting jammed. The hero declares that holding a weapon is forbidden and points out that, since he thinks life is boring, he can lose everything he has. He then uses his complete locking technique, stripping the man of everything he has, like his money and health. Getting impatient, Kaito skips to the fun part and takes him to the place where he will never get bored, Hell's infernal abyss. In a snap, he feels like he's in a place that smells of death and misery. Kaito burns in the Hell's crest and will trap his soul in Hell even after he dies, just like what he gave to the people in the venue. The man calls him bluff again, but Kaito assures him that he'll understand once the messenger of Hell visits him in his dreams. He then contemplates if he's going to revive the guards who died and then watches as the man starts to get mad. In the classroom, the students cheer as the rescue team reaches their location. At the grand venue, the VIP are all apprehended for being involved in the death game. Meanwhile, Kaito successfully revives the guards and declares that finally everything is over. However, he suddenly hears a familiar voice calling out for him and sees, in his consciousness, the goddess Samayo. Kaito questions Samuel about her sudden appearance. The goddess is surprised at how nonchalant he is despite what happened. She reprimands him for using his magic, but the hero points out that she should have come and stopped the culprits. She tells him that she can't because of the barrier he puts up. She understands that he wants to help his classmates, but what he did was too much, as his identity as a hero is now revealed. The hero implores her to overlook the situation, which the goddess agrees with. However, Samuel worries that the laws of the world have been distorted, so she needs to alter the memories of the people who learned about his powers. Kaito thanks her for saving him from the hassle. Samuel questions why it's okay for his classmates to forget his heroic acts, noting they'll remember him as the lazy student. The hero coolly admits that it is fine as long as everyone is safe, which makes the goddess swoon at his chivalrous act. She then fixes the spell, thinking of making him a judo or Edo master in the memories of his classmates. Kaido tells her to be careful, as it is dangerous to fix a spell. Just then, the goddess clumsily breaks a magic chain, which the hero promptly helps her fix. Using the Song of Repair, he fixes and finishes the spell by himself, saving the goddess from making a mistake. He asks her about the wish she promised to grant him. As she remembers their conversation, she asks if he needs her help right now, but the hero replies that he wants to save it for later. In response, the goddess tells him that she is always ready to help and reminds him not to use his powers unless it is really necessary. Then she activates the spell and assures him that she will always keep an eye on him. With that, Samuel's memory alteration spell is completed, and time continues to move forward. The next day, everyone starts talking about what happened during the death game and the people involved in it. In the midst of all this, a new hero emerges, a hacker who managed to save his classmates from danger, and his name is Shugi. Shugi is overwhelmed by the fame he has gained after the incident and enjoys all the attention. Kaido confirms that the spell worked well because he sees how his classmates are excited and impressed with Shugi, who is now the center of admiration among them. The atmosphere is filled with excitement as they discuss the events and Shugi's brave actions, showing that they are grateful to be safe and together again. Kuga enters the room and lashes out at them for being so loud. The girl's mood immediately turns sour upon seeing him, calling him the worst virgin. Insulted, he decides to punish them by making them buy his shoes. Shugi casually tells him that he should change after everything that has happened, which the boy immediately dismisses. Kaido can't resist it anymore, so he tells him to buy them himself. Annoyed, Kuga marches out, but Kaido instructs him that he should buy them drinks while he's out. The delinquent is about to refuse when Shugi chimes in, pointing out that he better listen or no one will talk to him. He should treat it as a way of apologizing for what happened on the island. Shugi then announces to the class that Kuga is buying them drinks, prompting everyone to request theirs and overwhelming the boy. After the chaos, Shugi mentions that he is tired after attending a bunch of interviews since the two of his friends are not good with people. He comments that he's more of a player than them. He points out that Kaido should also attend an interview to defeat muscular guys back on the island. Hearing this story, Kaido can't help but curse the goddess under his breath. Torishima admits that he's glad that the two of them were able to save everyone. Just then, Sue shares that he wants to become a YouTuber. His friends comment that he's surprisingly greedy for fame. However, the boy clarifies that he wants to find information about his missing father, who might fall victim to the death's game as well. By becoming famous, he figures out he'll get more information, promising to find his father. Hearing this, Horishima comments that his thirst for revenge won't end once it's over. Baffled, Sui inquires about what Torishima is talking about. The boy urges him to come with him for a bit. He brings him to his cemetery where all of his childhood friends are buried because of death's game. They were supposed to go to a foster home from the orphanage, but they were all tragically killed and their deaths were covered up. He should have revealed the identities of the killers, but he was threatened, so he just kept quiet. Despite feeling a lot of guilt, he knows that his classmates want to return home, even if it means that the organization they are fighting against is destroyed. He feels the same way about Sui's father. He admits that he was once like Sui, filled with a desire for revenge. However, his thirst for revenge led him to become very depressed, which is why he is now worried about his classmates' well-being. When Sui hears this, she feels sorry for making him remember such painful memories. Torishima reassures him that it is okay, saying that he also wants to be heard and wishes they had been classmates the previous year. This heartfelt moment makes Kaido think about whether he could go back in time and help them, wishing he could change things for the better. He ponders how different everything might have been if they had all been together last year, and he feels a strong desire to support his friends as they face their current challenges. However, the goddess immediately reminds him that she's watching him closely. He promises not to do it, and thus the death game that started on an abducted school bus comes to an end. Meanwhile, Sue stumbles upon Torishima's old orphanage while researching and receives a strange letter about a school trip. Sui and Suzuki marvel at the sight of a hotel, not believing that it would just cost them a lot. Meanwhile, Kaido looks forward to yet another trip. The group enters the hotel and heads to the location of their welcome spa. The girls comment that it's pretty unusual to have a bath first, comparing the experience to the book where the people entering the restaurant become food. Excited about the trip, Kato tells her not to jinx anything. Suzuki apologizes and points out that they should attend the special show in the evening. On the other hand, Sue silently thinks that it would be wise to stop the trip and remembers how they got there in the first place. A few days ago, Torishima handed them accommodation vouchers he won for a villa trip at a discounted price. However, Sui found it suspicious, like the spam email he had received. He showed Torishima the email, who didn't think that a simple thing could be dangerous. Overhearing them, Kato, who is thirsty for a trip, convinced them to join, saying that if they don't go now, they might not go on a trip ever. It turned out that Sue was the only one who could see that it was a scam and decided to join to create material for his video. Later, at the massage chairs, Kaito fell fast asleep again, even though he was the most excited about the trip. Suzuki looks at him and comments that she understands why he is sleeping because the massage chair is very comfortable. However, Torishima and Sui both sense that something feels strange and familiar about the situation. Despite their worries, they start to feel sleepy, and soon they drift off into slumber. When they finally wake up, they find themselves in a small, enclosed room. Sue quickly turns to Torishima and blames him for not being aware of the danger they are in. But when she looks at Kaito, who is still sleeping soundly, she realizes he is the worst one of all. As they inspect the room, Sue notes that this is not just a simple scam anymore. They are definitely trapped in a death game. Torishima agrees with her assessment. Just then, the monitor on the wall suddenly lights up, revealing a talking skull that greets them and welcomes them to his death hotel. The eerie welcome sends chills down their spine as they realize the seriousness of their situation. He introduces himself as Death, the dead man. The people inside are all confused and demand to be let out, not aware that they're now in a game of life and death. However, the skull just laughs at them, saying they're not going anywhere as they're a part of a special show tonight. Meanwhile, Suzuki is searching for the president, but he cannot find her anywhere. Just then, Kaito finally wakes up as Death is about to reveal what is hidden under the covers in the center of the room. Death pulls back the covers to show that it is Sato, tied up in chains and sitting in a chair inside a glass case. The group becomes worried about what is going to happen next, especially since there is a flask hanging above her. At the same time, Kaito is still feeling groggy and confused about why the president is trapped in a glass case. He thinks about using magic to stop time so he can figure things out, but then he remembers that Goddess Samayo might notice him using such a strong spell. Instead, he decides to use low-level magic that is weak enough that the goddess will not realize what he is doing. This way, he hopes to help Sato without drawing attention to himself. Like a miracle, he goes through the glass and carries Sato out of it. This leaves Death lost for words, wondering what just happened. Suzuki is so relieved that Sato is okay that she hugs her. She lets Sato catch up to the fact that they are in a death game again. Torishima says that it is his fault that the game has started and that the skull-wearing man on the TV he calls the dead man is the one responsible for the game. Death is annoyed that he gets his name wrong, only for Torishima to still think his name is Do-D Death, then focuses his attention on how Kaito got Sato out of the reinforced tempered glass that has a sensor that was supposed to be triggered if someone takes a single step inside. The other classmates wonder about this as well, leaving Kaito to explain himself. He casts a spell called Invisible Trust and tells his classmates that he is good with magic tricks. Due to the spell, none of the people in the room questioned what he said. Only Death is the one who thinks his explanation is weird. With Sato now saved, the room of people now focuses their attention on getting out of the room. They cannot find any openings, so Kaito suggests that they should make one for themselves. This makes Death laugh, knowing that the walls are made of thick military-grade materials and are strong enough to be used in nuclear shelters. Before the game host can even finish his sentence, Kaito has already broken through the wall with just a punch. The people start to question this, so Kaito casts his trust spell again and tells them it is because he knows karate. Again, the gullible people believe him, aside from Death. As people start to express their desire to move on to other hotel activities, Kaito suddenly asks everyone to cover their ears. He steps on something hidden on the floor, and a huge explosion erupts. Afterward, he explains that he has removed the landmines, leaving the others curious about how he managed to do it. Kaito had cast a spell on them, and they all believed his explanation without any doubt. Meanwhile, Death is confused by what just happened, so Kaito decides to try the same spell on him, but it doesn't work. He realizes that he has cut his magic short because he knows that if he uses too much, the goddess will notice what he is doing. With the danger now gone, everyone in the room is eager to leave, but Death desperately pleads with them not to go. As only our heroes remain in the room, the game host continues to beg them to stay, tears welling up in his eyes. Sato feels sympathy for him and encourages the others to at least listen to what he has to say. This prompts Death to keep begging, telling them that he has prepared a lot of fun activities for them and that there will be a prize in the end. Despite his reassurances and promises, the group still feels uncertain and is not convinced to stay. This does not stop the skeleton from trying to persuade them to trust him. Kaido then asks his friends what they think about the situation. While Torishima expresses that he does not want to fall into any more traps, he also feels a bit of sympathy for the game host, believing that he might be in a difficult and tragic situation. Sui agrees and thinks that by continuing, they might learn more about the other people involved in the game. Kaido considers all their opinions, and together, they decide to move forward and continue with the game. Death watches the whole scene unfold on his monitor, laughing to himself about how he managed to convince the group to keep playing. However, his mood suddenly shifts when his boss, the chairman, makes an unexpected video call to him. This surprise call catches Death off guard and changes the atmosphere in the room. The shadowy hooded woman, who is the chairman, wants to be sure from her underling Death that the good luck he has had so far will not continue. Death stumbles over his words as he tries to convince her that nothing like that will happen again. He confidently assures her that all of the contestants will meet their due in the game. The chairman falls silent for a moment, which makes Death feel nervous and tremble. Finally, she responds, saying that she is satisfied with what he said. However, she warns him about the serious consequences he will face if he fails to fulfill the contract he is bound to. After the chairman disconnects the call, Death expresses his frustration at feeling so belittled. He starts to complain about how his dreams of creating a popular death channel seem to be slipping away. He tells himself that he will not let this happen, especially since the next room is filled with a large amount of money that he has put into the game, motivating him to succeed and prove himself. Meanwhile, the group of classmates finds themselves in a dark room, and they cannot see what is inside. Because of this, they are cautious about entering. Death tries to calm their nerves by assuring them that there are no traps inside and that they can quickly close the door if needed. However, the group becomes suspicious of his words. In response, the Skullman promises that he is telling the truth. Kaido uses his trust spell to reassure his friends that everything will be okay since he can easily destroy anything dangerous with his karate skills. Trusting Kaido, the others decide to follow him without asking any more questions. Once they step inside and close the door behind them, it locks shut. Suddenly, the lights in the room flick on, and the group discovers that they are standing in a massive aquarium filled with all kinds of scary-looking fish swimming around them. The sight is both fascinating and frightening, making them realize just how deep they are in the game. The game host tells the group that they are stupid for listening to him, and now they need to swim to the next room in a pool full of murderous and bloodthirsty piranhas. They complain about how the game host promised that the game would be safe. However, Death denies he ever made such a promise. He further explains how the piranhas in the pool are especially bred to be more vicious than normal. He feels good about himself knowing that his channel views will grow. His mood gets ruined since all the piranhas are now dead. With invisible trust, Kaido tells the others that it is because he brought a taser with him. While they are all thinking that their friend just electrified the fish, Sato's tummy begins to growl, while the game host is complaining that they were supposed to dive in one at a time. As they hear each other scream, the gang has already cooked the piranhas and are eating them. They are enjoying the meals so much that they have already forgotten the dangers they were supposed to have. They think so little of Death, they continue to call him Du Disu. With the gang now full, they want to continue on with the game. However, none of them wants to swim, so Kaido breaks the glass aquarium with his fist. In the next room, there is a luxurious feast ready for the contestants. Despite this, the gang is already so full that they do not want to touch it. Even so, Death does not want the group to leave his thoughts. He remembers how his original plan was to make the contestants feel hungry after the swim, so they would not think twice about eating food that was actually filled with poison. He tries to persuade the teens by saying that the chef put a lot of effort into making the food and that the chicken recipe comes from the chef's late wife. This makes the group realize that the game host must have taken the chef's family as hostages to force him to cook. Death then tries to change the topic and encourages everyone to eat the food, but none of the teens are interested in doing so. They are too suspicious and think the feast might be poisoned. Kaido, wanting to play along with the game host, says that he will at least try one of the dishes to see if it is safe. In Death's mind, he has just tricked a couple of idiots into making him a famous death tuber. The moment our hero gets a bite into his mouth, the game host laughs hard and tells them that the young man just ate something so poisonous that it could slay a Tyrannosaurus. Despite everyone's worries, Kaido is actually enjoying his meal as he licks his fingers. He tells the others that they can eat everything on the table aside from the chicken. He says that he is only fine because he was born immune to all poisons. The others begin to want to eat too, with Torishima even wanting to leave leftovers for Death. The latter is getting frustrated at the series of events, wondering if the poison he tested on animals was even real. He looks at the chat room and sees that his viewers are making fun of him for being a failure. He gets so annoyed by this that he starts secretly praising himself online. The chairman calls in to remind Death about how he is failing to get even a single death. He tells him good luck and hopes that the blood that will fall will not be his. Death becomes so stricken with fear that he drops to the floor. He starts cursing and tells himself that he will turn things around, making sure everyone will fall. The next room is a series of hallways filled with medieval-style traps, as if they are in a dungeon. Death tells them that they are in a giant maze with various traps and surprises at every turn. The gang forges ahead. 5 minutes later, none of them had encountered any traps. Death begins to wonder why they just so happened to get into the part with the fewest traps. Kaido explains that it is because Sugi has hacked the system and has a map of the maze. The game host gets so frustrated by the lack of things happening that he pushes a button. The gang hears something coming and sees that there is a giant boulder about to flatten them. They start to run, only for Kaido to stay in place. With a spell, he destroys the boulder before it even touches him. The boulder turns into dust, and Death wonders what kind of karate the young man did. Our hero's friends do not even question it, thinking that knowing karate explains everything. With them being so safe, Suzuki wishes they had more thrill in the experience. Kaido hears this and promises that he will make sure things are not too safe from now on. Death is getting so sick of everything. He tells the group where the exit is so they can get to the next room faster. In the meantime, the gang is just relieved that no one is hurt. The game host is shivering from how at ease they all are, so Kaido asks if he is okay. Our hero peeks into Death's mind with his power of clairvoyance. Through the game host's eyes, he can see viewer comments. From what he sees, the young man realizes that Death is a death game streamer. Continuing on with the game, Death tells the group that not all of them will come out alive, for the next room is filled with lasers coming from the walls. The lasers are moving across the room, and they have to dodge them. Sugi drops his computer tablet into the path of a laser, causing it to break into 2 pieces. They now realize the danger they are in and look for Kaido to get them out of the situation. Without warning, the lasers are already increasing. The gang is skipping over the lasers over and over, all while Death is telling them to dance like puppets. While Sugi is on high alert, all Suzuki can think of is how slow the lasers are to get her really excited. Meanwhile, Sato is already full of sweat and is nearing her limit as they continue. Subi drops his stylus pen, and it gets cut in 2 by the laser. They realize that the lasers will temporarily stop if they hit something at the end of the hall. They see that there is a door with an oddly looking switch on it. Seeing the group notice the door, the game host tells everyone that if they manage to press the button on the door, it will open for them. He continues to say that since the lasers will temporarily vanish when they hit something, one of them needs to act as a shield for the others to reach the door and stay alive. Torishima waits to see how the group will decide to end their friendships and choose someone to be the victim. Without thinking twice, he firmly tells his friends to stand behind him. Death, the host of the game, feels let down because Torishima is willing to sacrifice himself. This decision takes away Death's chance to watch the others scramble and argue about who should be the one to give up their life to save themselves. As everyone carefully dodges the lasers that surround them, none of the friends agree with what Torishima is about to do. Even so, Torishima remains determined and does not change his mind. He runs bravely toward the lasers, telling his friends that this is his way of making up for putting them in danger by involving them in the game. He feels that he must take this action to find some peace and redemption. Before Torishima can move any further, Kazuo quickly stops him. It feels as if Torishima can read Kazuo's mind, and he asks if Kazuo is thinking that he should not have made it through the death game they faced last year. This question makes Torishima stop in his tracks, feeling surprised and a little scared by how well Kazuo understands him. Kaido then speaks up, saying that it's a really bad idea for Torishima to go through with his plan because he does not want any of his friends to get hurt or die. The rest of the group agrees with Kaido and expresses their worry, saying they don't want Torishima to go through with this dangerous action. However, Torishima steps forward confidently, telling everyone to trust him and leave everything to him. The group is curious and asks what he plans to do, but Torishima doesn't give them a clear answer. Instead, he tells them all to close their eyes while he does something. The group follows his instructions and shuts their eyes tightly. It feels as if a spell has been cast on them because none of them can manage to open their eyes again. The hero then lets himself be sliced up by the lasers as he is just walking in a relaxing stroll. He shows no reaction and tells the game host that he is giving him exactly what he wants. Death is in full glee at what happened, seeing the young man's body now in pieces on the floor. The chairman is so satisfied by the view that she thinks of sparing Death from her planned punishment for him. As Death screams about finally having a victim, the group of teens gets worried in their closed-eyes state, thinking that their friend is already gone. While the game host is celebrating, he hears Kido's voice as he tries to press the button on the door. He sees that the young man's body is slowly repairing itself as it still moves to press the button. The young man finds that the door will not open no matter how much he presses on it. He looks at the camera with a terrifying gaze as he tells Death that he has lied to them. This makes the game host tremble in fear. He cannot comprehend what kind of creature he is looking at. Thinking about this, Shubi gets an idea and takes his phone out. After remembering something with a sly smile, he says they can rely on the power of money and calls someone named Kongoji. They arrive at a young lady's palace, expecting to lead the beast there. Hearing that they need help with an animal, a bright woman expresses her love for pets and wonders what kind it'll be, as she's supposedly the only one they can rely on. However, she falls silent as Kaido calls King Red over, and the enormous feline walks toward her. He purrs and meows cutely, but they're all left in shock as Kongoji slowly faints and falls to the ground, not unlike Mai, as if floating in a warm pool. Kongoji feels something warm and wonders if she's sleeping. The others worry about her and try to force her awake as they see her shift from the noise. They hurriedly try to hide King Red before she opens her eyes. Blinking, she slowly props herself up, and the others apologize for surprising her like that. However, the surprises don't end as she finds a huge snout inches from her face. She screams in terror and orders them to get rid of the beast immediately. Subi asks for a chance and is scolded by Torishima. However, Kaido stops him, wanting to leave things for their classmate to handle. Kongoji argues that there's no reason for her to take such a large animal. Her friend insists that if she thinks about it, taking it can solve one of her main problems. Confused, she asks what her problem might be. To her surprise, he bluntly exposes her for being worried about her weak character in the story. The statement makes her stagger and demand an explanation for the strong claim. Torishima comments that it's too much, but Kaido tells him to keep quiet as she asks him to expound. The young man calls her out for her pretentious laugh, which she says has been with her since birth. He continues to question her, insisting that she's forcing herself too much. The other two confirm that she's conscious of her character, and Sugi says it's why he brought King Red with him, much to her confusion. He then builds the beast up, reasoning that her status will be boosted with the one-of-a-kind animal's presence. Faltering, showing hesitation, she turns away, saying it's too scary regardless, reminded of scary stories about beasts. However, he asks if she's content with being weak, adding that her only title is being called rich. That said, even on that front, Kurosa's will always beat her, and she's left as an unnecessary character. Kongoji's eyes and energy shift as she questions if he's implying that she's someone who doesn't stand out. Her family, who supposedly knew Vish when compared to Kurosa's long history, is being called an insignificant side character in the story. Despite his fear, he pushes on and reaffirms his statements. Shocked, she's forced to the ground. Unfortunately, it's still too scary for her. As such, he says they'll just have Torishima take the lion as the only survivor of the death game. That said, adding a rare lion to his name would only boost his status more and consequently drive theirs down with pride. Getting the better of her, she suddenly stands up and decides to adopt the lion. Without missing a beat, Sugi seals the deal, saying it's the best decision she can make. As things get settled, they hand King Red over to the lady, and she complains about his barbaric name. To the lion's confusion, she says she'll give him a name befitting of her pet. After a moment of consideration, she exclaims in delight and announces that his new name will be Echo, which literally means Red King. Despite Sugi's comment, Kamgoji rubs her new pet's mane, wanting to get along. King Red's days of violence were finally over. He had a new master who was much better than he could have imagined. As they went home, they talked about the cost of food and how Sugi's money would probably be enough. He said he didn't even borrow money to buy drinks sometimes. Then, a familiar voice called out to Kaido. Nanoka was with her friend and was going out because her brother was coming home. Sugi came closer and said his classmate's little sister was cute. Seeing her embarrassed, he introduced himself and Torishima and asked who the girl hiding behind her bag was. She was Mayami, and she had just started at their school. Kaido greeted her with bright eyes and thanked her for being friends with his precious sister. Mayami was surprised to see Kaido there. She had heard a lot about him from Nanoka, and she was a little nervous to meet him. Bashful and unable to meet his eyes, she says it's her who should be thankful. She says he and his friends are cool, but Nanoka remains unimpressed by her sloppy brother. While the young man finds her cute, the others are surprised to hear that he's sloppy. He wonders why someone transferred in the middle of the semester, but there are special circumstances around it. With a bright smile, Ma-yi frankly reveals that it's because of her parents' divorce. The information stuns the boys, and they awkwardly try to cheer her up. Her mother says divorces are normal nowadays and her father was a bad one. She recalls him cheating with the hostess and embezzling money from an inherited hotel until it went bankrupt. With the uncanny familiar story, they realize that she's Tero's daughter. Continuing, the girl bluntly expresses her relief to be separated from her father. Saying goodbye, Nanoka leaves them stunned as she shares that she's sleeping in Mayumi's home. He never would have thought that Tanaka's family was so close. That said, they decide to refrain from speaking ill, as they never know who's watching. The friends part ways and say goodbye. Kaido walks home and is unhappy with how he has to stay alone for the night. Just then, he feels a pair of hands on his face, saying he's been caught. It's Samayo asking if he's been avoiding her. Greeting her, he confirms it but says she found him quickly regardless. He worries about her being seen, but she can just erase their memories. He seriously doubts her doing that, but the goddess then brings up how he used greater magic again. As such, she's decided to take him to her space, separated from time, to give him a private scolding. He insists that he had no choice after so many things happened, but things faded to black and a few coins clattered to the ground behind him. Torishima appears from behind a pole, shocked to find his friend suddenly disappearing into thin air. Torishima is still shocked, not knowing if he really just saw his friend disappear into thin air. Just then, the young man reappears from a portal. Kaido greets him, already preparing a mind manipulation spell, and adds that he was just practicing a little magic trick with the spell. The boy barely questions it, but suddenly turns serious. It might be far-fetched, but he guesses he must have been the one who saved everyone during survival loss. Slightly surprised, the boy asks why he thinks so. Torishima remembers having a big fight together, but the memory is hazy. He felt that way multiple times during that day, and it's the same feeling he's having right now. Desperate for answers, he begs for an explanation from a classmate. Without much consideration, Kaido accepts the situation and reveals that he had no choice but to have the goddess alter their memories before. Since he's begun to break free from the spell on his own, it might be time to make a choice. The goddess slowly touched Torishima's head and used a spell to restore his forgotten memories. The young man fell to the ground as images and thoughts flooded his mind. The memories altered by the goddess were now back to normal, and his clear head helped him understand the next step. Kaido explained how he was summoned to another world and returned to Earth very strongly. The idea shocked the young man, and he doubted what he was hearing. Torishima sat up, his head spinning. He tried to process the information that Kaido had just given him. However, he eventually accepts it, believing things easily, and instead asks about the memory restoration magic that was used on him. He wonders if his friend saved the world, but instead asks why he didn't just erase his mind again when he's likely capable of doing so. When he was about to explain, a faint voice began to echo through the air, then suddenly shrieked, calling for the hero. The goddess has noticed what's happening and has come to handle things herself. She reaches for Torishima's head and immediately erases his memories again, questioning the hero's actions. However, Kaido restores his memories with a snap of his fingers and introduces the goddess to his friend. Samayo is incredulous, hearing that her divine language is even being translated directly into his brain. However, her demeanor instantly changes as Torishima gushes on about the goddess' abilities and beauty. Appreciating his honesty, the matter is considered settled, so they move on to the next point. Kaido recalls how the young man is worried about his classmates who were eliminated in survival loss. Unsure if it'll offer him relief, he says he tried to locate their whereabouts using his soul. The boy was surprised by the goddess' words, so she told him that he was a very special hero. Many of his classmates had been reborn, and he had found Ki, his childhood friend. He almost cried when he heard that she was living a new life favored by God. She had been reborn as a strong person and even remembered her past life, including the time they spent together. He thanked Kaido for telling him that she was doing well. However, he surprised the young man by saying that he would rather forget his memories. When asked if he was giving up, Torishima said that there was no way to meet her anyway. To their surprise, Kaido said that he was putting him at a crossroads and asked if he wanted to go to a different world. Torishima was shocked by Kaido's offer. He had never even considered the possibility of leaving his world behind. But as he thought about it, he realized that it might be the only way to see Ki again. After a moment of shock, he accepts the invitation, prompting the goddess to scold them both. The hero is told to stop approaching such things so casually, and she calls the other idiotically hasty. However, Torishima doesn't mind risking his life as he's desperate to meet Ki again. Fighting against her urges, Samayo rejects the idea, saying they can't decide such things alone. Kaido says he isn't deciding alone. After all, he needs her approval and cooperation. He can teleport them there, but there would be procedural problems. As such, he wants her to talk to the god of that world and smooth things out. He relies on her for the first time, making her waver. Getting a grip, she tries to argue that they don't have a proper reason. As such, he brings up the reward for saving her world, where she promised to grant him any wish. With this, he insists that a god's oath is a legitimate enough reason, making her whine even more as she expected him to wish for eternity with her in the god's realm. Thus, Torishima was sent to another world, but not before a quick farewell party. The news is that he's suddenly taking 3 months off school. Sato is glad that he can find his old friend alive and well somewhere. Meanwhile, Kuga is relieved that the large student is gone. Suji arranged a line, unaware that he was going to a different world, not just overseas. Surprisingly, the hero proves it, promising to give him a device compatible with the other world later. Regardless, they all enjoy the party, wishing him farewell and telling him to keep in touch. Later, Kaido approached him, asking if he was having fun and saying it'd be good to remember such atmospheres, as the world he's going to might not be peaceful. The day of his departure has come, and he boards the train and waves goodbye. With his friend's words in mind, he and Shugi watched the train disappear and talked about how quickly everything happened. The techie student then mentioned a novel with characters named like them, saying it sounded like a typical scary story. He invited Kaido to read it. He wondered if it would be okay and hoped nothing bad would happen again. Meanwhile, a skinny boy was scared and hiding from something with a hurt face. He was surprised to see that a friend was actually the king. They were playing a dangerous game where the king had all the power. The skinny boy was trembling with fear, his eyes wide with terror as he looked at the beaten face before him. He couldn't believe that his friend, who he had always thought of as kind and gentle, was now the king of a deadly game. The other players were all standing around, watching the scene with a mixture of fear and fascination. The king was raising his hand, and the skinny boy knew that he was about to be sentenced to death. He closed his eyes and waited for the inevitable.